Justinian I ruled during the Byzantine Empire's golden age. Yet, ironically, the man who lusted after the glory of ancient Rome was an outsider.
Well, the Emperor Justinian was born a peasant in what is now northern Yugoslavia, and he came with his uncle Justin to Constantinople to seek their fortunes.
His 40-year reign would be marked by intellectual brilliance, an unparalleled work ethic, and unbridled ruthlessness. 2 years before ascending to the throne, Justinian married a beautiful, strong-willed woman named Theodora. But there was just one problem. Theodora was a former burlesque dancer. So to take her checkered past out of the equation, Justinian simply promoted her. The day he was crowned emperor, he named Theodora as his co-empress. Her ascension to power sent shockwaves through the Byzantine aristocracy. Together, Justinian and Theodora would rule the empire as equals.
Constantinople was inaugurated as an imperial capital of the Roman Empire in 330, and it survived until 1453, when the Turkish conquest put an end to one imperial tradition and began another, renaming the city Istanbul. During this more than 1,000 years, the Byzantines conquered and lost several empires. In the 6th century, a Balkan empire was recaptured from the Goths. A Mediterranean empire was built up after a long, hard-fought war, also against the Goths. And an African empire was reconquered from the Vandals. But the African empire and much of the Middle East were lost to the Arabs in the 7th century. Most of the Mediterranean Empire was lost about the same time, with the remainder going in the 11th century, and the Balkan Empire was lost and partly regained in the 9th century. The city was built on a high peninsula on the Bosphorus, where Europe comes very close to the Asian shore. Astride both Europe and Asia, Constantinople was a crossroads par excellence. It commanded the route from the Caucasus and the steppes to the Mediterranean, and also the route from the Danube Valley to the Euphrates Valley. The Balkans were its backyard. Asia Minor lay just across the water, and beyond that Syria and Mesopotamia.
The Hippodrome was the center of Constantinople's public life. Conceived as a stadium for chariot racing, it could hold as many as 100,000 people. Construction of the Hippodrome had taken place over centuries. It was a gigantic task incorporating every known building technique. Shaped like an enormous U and modeled after Rome's renowned Circus Maximus, Constantinople's Hippodrome was nearly 1/3 of a mile long and wider than a modern-day football field. But the site its architects had chosen sloped severely to the south.
And there they built vaulted substructures. As was common in ancient Rome, vaulted substructures to create a level platform.
Freemen and masons were brought in from around the Mediterranean. Their first task, to build the substructure's arched wall 4 stories tall. The arches created a gallery for shops and cafes. Above the substructure, 2 tiers of columns and more than 30 stone rows surrounded the sand-covered racing track. The Hippodrome was one of the architectural glories of Constantinople. Justinian's first priority was to rebuild the city's main cathedral, called the Church of Holy Wisdom. We know it today as the Hagia Sophia. Justinian appointed 2 Byzantine architects, Isidorus and Anthemius, to design the church. Both were professors of mathematics and physics, skilled in theory, but with no real construction experience. Isidorus and Anthemius's design for the cathedral was revolutionary in concept and unprecedented in scale. They set out to create the largest dome ever built, 100 feet across. They began by using an architectural device first attempted by the Romans, but never fully achieved. It was called the pendentive. The first step, construct 4 massive arches on which the dome would rest. Next, the pendentives, rounded triangles that connect the dome's circular base to the square base below and distribute its weight evenly among the four arches. By adding smaller semi-domes, an even larger area would be created. Using pendentives, Justinian's architects were able to construct a gigantic dome that appears to hover in midair. The dome rises 184 feet, 30 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty. The nave over which the dome hung would be a massive open space measuring 229 feet by 245 feet.
There were 100 teams of workmen, each with 100 men, with half of them working on the north side of the building, half of them working on the south side of the building, and competing to create the great building.
A church of unprecedented proportions grew up magically, almost magically, faster than any kind of construction at that time on that scale.
Hagia Sophia was dedicated in 537 AD, less than 6 years after the first stones were laid. Hagia Sophia was known for more than just its novel design. Even the columns were elaborately adorned with monograms of the emperor and his empress.
There were churches too, filled with the holiest of relics. Fragments of the true cross set in gold and blood-red rubies. And great jeweled cups made for the emperor's own communion. And at the heart, at the very center of this magic palace, Byzantium's throne room. The throne room of the Emperor of
Justinian
Christendom.
had created a centerpiece for Christianity and further solidified Constantinople as the capital of the Christian world.
It also quite literally helped to divide Christendom between Rome and Constantinople, because the Patriarch of Constantinople stood for iconoclasm, while the Pope of Rome stood against it.